This talk is going to look at some of the reasons why we struggle to talk about our own mental health difficulties, what impact that has on us, and how we can better look after ourselves and each other. So, why is it that in actual fact we aren't willing to say, I'm not okay? And so these are kind of some of the reasons. Like, society and our culture tells us things like, pull up your socks, right? These will probably be familiar to a lot of you all. Turn a frown upside down. I love that one. So suck it up. Just get over it and suck it up, you know? Don't make such a big deal out of it. Or this is my personal favorite because, as you can hear by my accent, I'm not English. And this is very kind of an English thing, apparently. Keep a stiff upper lip. And also all these messages about, you know, boys don't cry, or, you know, it's not okay to not be happy. And so we've been taught to ignore, deny, and avoid our emotions. So no wonder we kind of hide what we're feeling in front of each other. And it's also really interesting, these sort of things, you know, people ask us, how many times a day are you asked this question, you know, how are you? You know, and what's our response? Our response is usually the easy, automatic reply of, oh, good, yeah, fine, okay, you know, those sort of things. But really, how are you, you know, and do we really believe that the other person wants to know? So we all kind of smile, don't we? We smile online, we hide behind facades, and sometimes we try so hard to hide who we are and what we're going through that, you know, we don't show anyone really how we're feeling. And there's a cost, you know, I wonder what sort of cost that has. So we kind of put on a mask, we hide the kind of sadness or the hurt or the pain behind the mask. And then that kind of perpetuates this kind of idea that it seems everyone else is okay, but not us, you know, because everyone else seems, hiding behind the mask seems like that they're okay. So there's a lot of reasons then that we kind of don't share. First of all, because of this reason, we think everyone's all right and it must just be us and we're alone in our struggles. Sometimes it's also because of fear of judgment. So like the biggest obstacle to opening up about how we feel and perhaps then seeking help are usually about fears of judgments from friends, family, or employers. So, you know, because of that general stigma around mental health problems, you know, and sometimes it feels like society's saying that we should always be happy and that showing your sadness is a real sign of weakness or being a failure or something's wrong with us. So it's interesting to look at some of the statistics. So I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but just some basic statistics. These were carried out from Time to Change survey last year, and these are some of the mental health statistics. So 1 in 4 people affected with mental health problems. So even if you don't have a problem currently, you know, it's likely that a friend, family member, or a work colleague is affected. And in a recent survey, 58% of people said that the stigma and discrimination is harder to deal with than the illness itself. 60% of people with mental health problems waited for over a year to tell people closest to them. You know, they just stopped them for telling that they're not okay to tell others. 1 in 10 young people will experience a mental health problem, and 26% of those young people felt that the stigma around their condition was so severe that it made them want to give up on life. And 57% of young people with mental health problems say that the fear of stigma stopped them from applying for a job. So they're pretty kind of major statistics that we're kind of noticing there, aren't we? You know, with people's kind of moods and things like, you know, with kind of mental health issues around the world and in our country, sorry. So it's interesting, you know, really, how are you is a really interesting question. You know, we all have good days and bad days, and no one can be perfectly happy all of the time unless you're a robot. You know, it's not human to be 100% happy all of the time because no one has a life without struggles because they're unavoidable. So, you know, life will throw things at us that are out of our control, and, you know, we may respond in ways, you know, that kind of affect our mental health and our well-being. That's really normal. So there's a real cost in sucking this up, in sucking up kind of all our issues and our difficulties. You know, when we're told to hold on to our sadness or anger or pain, then it's like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. You know, I don't know if any of you have ever been sort of, you know, in a pool or in the sea, and you've got a beach ball that you're constantly kind of trying to keep under the water. And it's a bit like that. You know, we're constantly trying to push these kind of emotions and feelings and things down, and eventually we get so tired that it just actually overwhelms us and blows up. So, you know, it is like a pressure cooker. And I guess the other thing to mention is that often, you know, people, because of the stigma attached to mental health mental illness, sorry, and mental health difficulties, is that we feel like that we may be defined by it. But, you know, it's a bit like having an illness or having a broken bone or, you know, getting physically unwell. It doesn't define us. And it'd be really useful if we started seeing, you know, kind of our brains and mental health, much like the rest of our body, that, you know, sometimes they just become unwell, but that doesn't mean that's who we are, and it doesn't mean we can't get through it and get over it. So asking for help, you know, this kind of opening up when we're struggling can be one of the hardest things to do. You know, if we have problems, like we said, the statistic earlier, you know, is that people take a long time, you know, over a year to open up and kind of share some of their difficulties. But if we have problems, we need to share them. You know, think about how you feel when you're struggling or suffering or in pain, and someone reaches out to you in kindness, caring, and understanding. So really, you know, thinking about that, you know, when we share a problem, they become smaller. And there's that kind of cliche that a problem shared is a problem halved. And often, you know, we have these sort of cliches because they're actually, you know, there's some truth behind them. So kind of sharing them, you know, you can really kind of resolve them easier and feel a lot better, and also feel like you're not alone, because it's kind of scary when you know, feeling you know, unwell psychologically, that you feel very alone. So one of the things is thinking about building our support networks, you know, and some of these areas might be easier for some to build than others. You know, not everyone is lucky enough to have, you know, a supportive family. Not everyone, you know, maybe is lucky enough to have supportive friends, and that doesn't say anything about us as individuals. It's just, you know, circumstances sometimes. But if we do have those people around us, it's thinking about just telling people close to you, choosing someone, a family member, a good friend, that you can tell them how you feel, and that can make a really big difference. And they might be able to help you out in other ways as well, in support or in kind of, you know, signposting or doing things for you. Support at work, you know, such as your line manager or, you know, the HR department, human resources, you know, might be worth contacting if you're really struggling. And we also have the employee assistance schemes, the Spectrum Life, which I'll give you links to later on. And of course, if you're a student here at university, then perhaps talking to personal tutors or people at the student union, or of course student services and people like us at Wellbeing, you know, contacting Wellbeing. And again, I'll give you the links and the resources to that at the end. There's also a lot of online peer support. Again, for the students, we've got Together All. I'm not sure whether the staff can access that. I apologise about that. But Together All is this kind of supportive online community that's also supported by professionals. And, you know, it's anonymous and confidential, and you can just go on there just to recognise, you know, and get that support from peers and find out that you're not alone in your struggles. You know, there's also things like Ellie Friends. And if you go online, you'll find that there's a lot of online kind of support services out there that can be really helpful. I know it sounds a bit strange, you know, to go online to kind of reach out and get that support, but it can be really comforting to know that people get what's going on for us. And of course, if you're really feeling like you need some professional support, that you're really struggling and you know, you're not coping very well, it might be useful to see a GP as well, because, you know, if you speak to your doctor, they can also signpost you and you know, help you kind of on the road to recovery. Now, one of the important things is to look after yourself. You know, I did a talk last year about looking after your well-being, and we kind of all know the sort of things that can be helpful, but we sort of get a bit we forget and we get a bit sort of sidelined and caught up in other things. But if you kind of look after yourself and start recognizing your red flags and reach out before it's too overwhelming, then you go in some way to kind of helping yourself, kind of your well-being, to kind of recover quicker in your well-being. So, for example, my red flags are I tend to withdraw. So when I'm really overwhelmed and feeling anxious and stressed, I tend to pull back from friendships. I don't, I don't tend to call people as much. And I also get very irritable at home. I get very snappy. So red flags are the changes that you begin to recognize in yourself or in others when your mental health is in decline. So, you may become increasingly anxious. Your mood might drop. There might be changes in your sleep patterns. There might be changes in the way you eat. You might lose your appetite or have more appetite, or overeat, or you might have difficulty getting up in the morning. You can become more angry, more tearful, or procrastinate, or things like that more than usual. And so when you kind of recognize your red flags and catch them early and reach out before they become overwhelming, it can be really helpful and go a long way into kind of helping you getting through the difficult things faster. Now, managing our mental health and well-being, that's a really important thing, that self-care. We always, you can't pour from an empty cup. That's a real kind of a thing that we say at the Wellbeing Centre. And it is looking after our own mental health and well-being, even before we experience any difficulties. And it's very personal, and it's about checking out what works for you. That might be, for some people, that might be exercising and running around a lot. It might be having a bath. It might be some quiet time. It might be reaching out to friends and talking. For some people, it may not be those sort of things. It might just be reading and giving ourselves some kind of loving kindness. So it's very, very personal. But one thing I can say, that usually there is a real kind of tried and true kind of stress, anxiety, and mood kind of low mood reduction strategies. And those are things like getting adequate sleep. And even if those people who struggle with sleep, it's not just necessarily about sleep, but getting adequate rest. And again, exercising regularly, it's kind of known to improve kind of our well-being physically and psychologically. And for some, again, this may be a rigorous run around the block. For others, that may just be a gentle stretch or maybe a walk outside. Practicing things like, mindfulness or relaxation techniques. And again, that may be, for some people, it may be formal kind of mindfulness or meditation. And for others, it may just be, having a nice long bath or just really some other relaxation techniques. And spending time in nature is really important too. That there's a lot of evidence about just being able to kind of be in nature. And that could be just looking out an open window or just stepping outside your front doorstep, just to connect a little bit with the natural light. And perhaps if you're lucky enough to have some plants, or go for a gentle walk or something like that. And as I say, for some people, it's about reaching out. And, this encouragement to reach out and talk when you really need to is really important. And if we can learn to sort of prioritize these behaviors in our lives, then it goes a long way to increasing our psychological well-being and even bolstering our immune system. And it's also these kind of self-care activities also help improve our kind of self-awareness, our self-regulation, and our coping strategies. So, I think it's really useful to kind of get into the habit of kind of strengthening our self-care to be able to look after ourselves. So, it's okay not to be okay, because we all struggle at times, and that's kind of part of the human condition. And I think that that's really important to remember. And what I'd like it to read you here, just to kind of finish up on before I sort of give you some of the resources and tell you about some of the kind of, signposting and things like that. I'd like to read you this extract from this book. And it's actually just a chapter in the book, BOZOS on the Bus, by Elizabeth Lesser. And it's broken open how difficult times can help us grow. And I'm just going to read a little part of it. Someone read this to me once at a training I did in London many years ago, and it just left such a lasting impact on me that, I kind of try and share it every time I have the opportunity. So I hope you get something out of it as much as I did. So, bozos on the bus. We are all bozos on the bus, Contrary to the self-assured image we work so hard to present to each other on a daily basis, we are all half-baked experiment, mistake-prone beings, born without an instruction book into a complex world. None of us are models of perfect behaviour. We have all betrayed and been betrayed. We've been known to be egotistical, unreliable, lethargic and stingy. And each one of us has, at times, awakened in the middle of the night, worrying about everything from money to kids to terrorism. In other words, we're all bozos on the bus. This, in my opinion, is a cause for celebration. If we're all bozos, then we can put down the burden of pretense and get on with being bozos. We can approach the problems that visit bozo-type beings without the usual embarrassment and resistance. It is so much more effective to rough edges with a light and forgiving heart. Imagine how freeing it would be to take a more compassionate and comedic view of the human condition, not as a way to deny our defects, but as a way of welcoming them as a part of the standard human operating system. Every single person on this bus called Earth hurts. It's when we have shame about our failings that hurts turns into suffering. In our shame, we feel an outcast, as if there is another bus somewhere rolling along on a smooth road. Its passengers are all healthy, happy, well-dressed and well-liked people who belong to harmonious families, hold jobs that never bore or aggravate them, and never do or say something totally inappropriate. We long to be on that bus with the other normal people. But we're on the bus that says bozo on the front, and we worry that we may be the only passenger on board. This is the illusion that so many of us labour under, that we're all alone in our weirdness and our uncertainty, that we may be the lost person on the highway. Of course, we don't always feel like this. Sometimes a wave of self-forgiveness washes over us, and suddenly we're connected to our fellow humans. Suddenly we belong. It's wonderful to take your place on the bus with the other bozos. It may be the first step to enlightenment, to understand with all your brain cells that the bus, that sleek bus with the cool people who know what they're doing, is also filled with bozos. When we see clearly that every single human being, regardless of fame or fortune or age or brains or beauty, shares the same ordinary foibles, a strange thing happens. We begin to cheer up, to loosen up, and we become buoyant as those we imagined on the other bus. As we rumble along the potholed road, lost as ever through the valleys and over the hills, we find ourselves among friends. We sit back and enjoy the ride. So I hope you enjoyed that, Bozos on the Bus. And I just think it really kind of shows clear that we're all putting on these facades. And actually, if we just put down our facades and we connect to each other, and we really get on a deep level that we all struggle and suffer, and that's okay. It is okay to not be okay. Then actually, you know, we might go a long way in sort of connecting and supporting and caring for each other. So just to sort of finish up this talk, I just want to tell you about some of the sort of support and help that you can get. So if you visit our Wellbeing website, whether you're staff or student, then we have a lot of amazing resources that all of you can access there. You know, there's lots of workbooks, apps. As you can see down the bottom, just lower down is all the self-help and peer support online self-help. We have booklets, Wellbeing Approaches to COVID, you know, which have just recently been developed. We have things like lots of workbooks on anxiety, stress, low mood, things like that, relaxation, mindfulness apps. We have Act for Life, which is based on acceptance and commitment therapy, which is an audio guide that kind of works in a way to kind of help you connect to things that are meaningful in your life. We have Together All, as I mentioned earlier, which is an online forum which is supported by professionals that you can write to and get some feedback and support from some of the professionals, but there's also sort of peer support, and it's all confidential and anonymous. If you're a staff member, we have Spectrum Life, which is the new counselling kind of support service that the university is using now, and I'll show you a bit more contact details in the next slide. Also, if you're interested, down the bottom, I've written there the OK movement. There's a really lovely section on people's stories and how they struggled, you know, on their own, and how they opened up, and then the support that they received. And some of the stories are actually really, really kind of uplifting. And then, of course, there's the It's OK campaign.co.uk that's also kind of worth having a look at. And they also have signposting to resources and other things. Also, if you go onto our Wellbeing page, we have the Wellbeing Toolkit, and that's kind of quite an extensive toolkit that helps you kind of work through all sorts of areas and build resilience. So it's kind of a building, you know, learning to building resilience toolkit that's worth looking at. And also for the students out there, not unfortunately not for staff at the moment, but we also run a lot of workshops and courses online now as webinars, and you can book them through My Career Zone. And we have anything from stress busting to managing perfectionism. We just ran one on uncertainty and worry. And a lot of them are actually recorded. And if you go to our website, you'll see recorded webinars, and anyone can access those, including staff, if you want to kind of have a listen to them and get some tips and advice on how to manage certain difficulties. And finally, we realise that everyone's really unsettled in the current situation. You know, it's constantly changing, and, you know, and it's really difficult for many people. And often if you're already struggling with some mental health difficulties, then it can really exacerbate them. And so for the students, the wellbeing services are open, and we're carrying out appointments mostly online. But initially, if you book an appointment, a telephone referral appointment, by either phoning that number or emailing Wellbeing, speak to a wellbeing practitioner just to find out what might be the kind of best source of support for you, kind of have a chat about that. And for the staff, there's Spectrum Life, and you can phone by the free phone there, the UK free phone, but there's also an international number if you happen to be based overseas at the moment. And also you can go to the Spectrum Life online portal and have a look at what they offer and how to book appointments. So that's all from me as far as this talk goes. So, you know, I'm going to pop on my camera again and welcome you all to ask any questions if you like. And yeah, that would be welcome to ask anything.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That was really, really useful. I particularly enjoyed the BOZOS on the bus piece.
Good. Thank you.
Very appropriate. Yes, as Kathy says, if anyone's got any questions, do feel free to ask. Joan, would you like to take the mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Could we have the presentation, please?
Yes, you're welcome to. I'll send it to Hannah, and I guess she can send it all on, but I'm suspecting this has been recorded, and hopefully it'll be uploaded.
Yeah, sorry, it's been recorded, and I could put the slides up in the same place as well if people want them.
That'd be really useful, thank you.
Yeah, I'll send them on. Any other?
A message.
Any other questions? You're welcome to ask anything you like, even that's not part of the presentation. That's fine by me.
No. Okay. Well, I will share some of the contact details in the chat, and then also the recording of this. Oh, Lisa's got a question. What arrangements for mediation between staff are there?
Arrangements for mediation between staff. I'm afraid, because I work more in the student wellbeing, that I can't really answer that question. So I think that probably the best people would be to get in contact would be HR. The human resources will probably be able to tell you that. If you go to the Spectrum website, there might be some information on there as well. So yeah, either that's the Spectrum website, which you can just go into on our website, or contacting HR. I hope that helps answer the question, but like I said, I'm not really au fait with that because I work much more with the students for student wellbeing.
Thank you. Beth just wanted to say thank you.
You're welcome, Bethan.
Okay. So unless anyone has anything else, I can draw it to a close. We've got the next talk isn't going to be until January when term starts again. It'll be nice to see you there if possible. Tell your friends, cats, loved ones, anyone welcome.
Okay.
And I will share details about wellbeing support in the chat. So thank you very much again, Kathy, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, and have a good break, Christmas break, when you eventually get there, everyone. So bye for now.